We begin on Samach Vav Amud Aleph, 6 lines in from the Amud, where it says Ela Amarove. This goes back to a question that the Gemara is discussing regarding Rabbi Yehuda's opinion when you have leftovers of karbanis from one year going into the second year, into the next year. The case the Gemara had before was regarding the karbanis of Yom Kippur. You have the par and the soy that have to be brought in Yom Kippur. It got lost. So he brought new ones, and then he found the ones that were lost, and now it's extra. What does he do with them? So Rabbi Yehuda says, Yamos. They have to be left to die. There's nothing you can do with it. So the Gemara asks, why? We see that Rabbi Yehuda says that if you have machzas hashekel, the same story when it got lost and you found it, so what do you do with the extra machzas hashekel? You can use it for the following year. So why don't we say the same thing over here regarding these karbanas? So the Gemara tried 4 different answers, and it asked questions in all of them, and now we come to the final answer. Ela Amarove. So Rava says the answer is as follows. Gzeire mishum takola. Problem over here is, someone not guide us the word gzeire. The issue is that there's a takola. There's some mishap that could happen. What exactly is it? The Gemara will explain now. The Tanan, or the other gear says, the Tanya, we learned in the Braisa as follows. Today, Bisman Hazeh, right? There's no Beis HaMikdash, so a person is not allowed to make something hektish. Ve'ein marichin, which is another kind of hektish, where you say erki alai, the value of a person or another person is upon me to give to hektish. You're not allowed to do that today. Ve'ein machrimin, which is another type of hektish, where you say the cheirem, it should be today, bishter. Bisman Hazeh. You can't do that today. Why aren't you supposed to do that today? Because if it becomes hektish, so there's no Beis HaMikdash, so then it might end up being misused. What are you going to do with it? If you did make hektish in any of these ways, so behemoth teyaker, if it's a behemoth, it should be uprooted, which the Gemara will say in a moment how. Peiris, if it's produce, fruits, ksus, clothing, v'kelim, other vessels, yirkavu, they should be left to rot. Mois, klimatchis, money or other metal vessels that are not going to rot. Yeilech hana liyama melech, you should take them to the Yama Melech. Again, some take out the word hana. You take it to the Yama Melech because you don't want anyone to misuse it. Now, when it said before regarding an animal, it should be uprooted. Ve'ezehu ikur, how do you uproot this animal? Noyel delis lefaneo, you lock the door in front of it. V'meisamele, and you leave it to die. Because it can't be used, you can't do anything with it. So therefore, you shouldn't do this bisman hazeh. So now the Gemara, it will explain, so now how does that apply over here when you have extra karbanis from one year going into the next year? So takala demai. What mishap are you worried about? Are you afraid that if you keep these animals all the way to the following year, someone just might bring it as a carbon when it's not supposed to be brought? Right? It's meant to be for Yom Kippur, and you might bring it some other time. If that's what you're concerned about, if so, afilikol rayis nami. Many other cases. This is not the only case. There are many cases where a carbon is there and it can't be brought. And what is the halacha? You leave it to graze until it gets a mum. So if you're concerned that by leaving these animals around, it might be brought as a carbon, you should always be concerned about that. So the Gemara says, so it can't be that. So itakola de gizev avayda. Elamai, maybe when you're not concerned that he's going to bring it as a carbon, you're concerned that you might share the wool or you might use it for work, which is also not allowed if it's kachim. So again, the question is, nami, all those other animals that are still kachim and they're left to graze, how could you leave them to graze? Why shouldn't you be concerned that the person's going to misuse them in this way? So the Gemara goes back and says, leaving these behemoths from Yom Kippur that weren't used to the following year, what we're concerned about is that it's going to be used as a carbon when it's not supposed to be. Now, why don't we have that concern always by all those animals that are left to graze? Those animals that are not destined to be brought as a carbon, they're puzzle for one reason or another, and therefore they're being left to graze. He's not occupied with that. He's not thinking in his mind that I'm going to bring this as a carbon. In his mind, it's clear these are not brought as a carbon anymore. But these animals here, there are designated eventually to be brought as a carbon in Yom Kippur. So he's constantly thinking, these are animals that are fit for karbanis, I have to bring it as a carbon. And therefore we're concerned that he might end up bringing it as a carbon in the wrong time. That's the answer of Rava, why for actual karbanis you can't bring from one year to the next. The Gemara just points out, this concept that we're concerned about a takala that will happen is a machlekes tanoim. The Tanya we learned in a Braisa, the Tanya Chode. In one Braisa we learned Pesach Shlei Karev Berisha, a carbon Pesach that did not end up being brought by the first time in Yudal Nissen. Yikra B'Sheni. So you leave it and you can bring it on the time for Pesach Sheni. B'Sheni, if it wasn't brought even at Pesach Sheni, Yikra L'Shana Haba, leave it to be brought the following year. That's one Braisa. The Tanya Idach, in a different Braisa we learned, Lo Yikrav. No, it should not be brought the following year. So what is the argument, whether you leave it till the following year? My lav v'takola pligi. So these two Braisas seem to be arguing about this point. Are we concerned that during the year it's going to be misused and brought for something else, even though it's not supposed to be? So the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Loi, lav dafka, their machlokes is based on this concept of takola. The kula alme loy chashina l'takola. I can tell you that everybody agrees that we're not concerned about this takola. But v'hacha beplukte the Rebbe v'Rabbanan pligi, kamifligi. Over here, they're arguing about the machlokes of Rebbe and the Rabbanan. What's the machlokes of Rebbe and the Rabbanan? So, if you remember from what you learned yesterday, the machlokes was, how do you count a full year? Is a full year the years of the lunar year, 354 days, or is the full year the solar year, which is 365 days? So now carbon Pesach could only be a year old. More than a year old, it's not kosher for the carbon. So according to the Rabbanon, you can't leave it until next year because it's going to be more than a year old. According to Rebbe, where a year is 365 days, it is possible that you will makdish your behemah when it was 8 days old, and by next year, it's still going to be just under a year. You'll still be able to bring it. So therefore, you could leave it for next year. So therefore, we could say that that's what their machlokes of here is. V'loi kashi, and therefore the two braises are not a contradiction. Ha Rebbe and v'ha Rabbanan. So we don't have to say they're arguing about a takola, whether we're afraid it's going to be misused during the year. But the Gemara asks on this, can't say this, because v'atanya, we learned in the braisa, v'chein hamois. The same argument they had about the leftover of a carbon Pesach, the actual carbon itself, whether you can use it for next year yet or not. They also had this machlokes regarding money that was designated for a carbon Pesach, and it wasn't used, whether they should leave it for next year or not. So now the question is, regarding money, there's obviously no issue of being a year or more than a year old. So what is the machlokes about the money? The machlokes is, as we mentioned, takola. Do you want to leave this money around and it might be misused? Or you're not concerned that it's going to be misused? So here we clearly see that there's a machlokes about this concept of takola. Shema mino. That's a raya, that's machlokes here. So the Mishnah, continuing with the Aveda of the Kohen and the Yom Kippur, we come to the next step. And here we're going to be learning about what's actually done with the Sar Lazazel. The Kohen Gadol comes to the Sar that's going to be sent off to the Azazel. And he leans both of his hands on it. And he confesses for the Yidden. And this is what he says. Oh, na Hashem, Chotu, Avu, Poshu, Lefanecha, Amcha, Beis Yisrael. Yidden sin, Chotu is B'Shegig, Avu is B'Mezid, Poshu is when it's done with a Merida. Right? We had before in the Gemara, there was a discussion about this because the Bach here brings in the order of how you say it. The other order is that you start Avu, then Pashu, then Chatu. You go from the more severe to the less severe. L'fanecha amcha beis Yisrael, the Yidden, on Hashem, kapena, l'chatoim, v'la'aveinis, v'la'pshoim. Forgive the Yidden for their averis. Shechatu, she'avu, v'shapashu, l'fanecha amcha beis Yisrael. Karkosav, b'seiris Moshe, avdecha leimar, ki b'yoyim hazeh, yichaper aleichem, l'tayir eschem, mikol chatiseichem, l'fnei Hashem titaru. That's what the Kohen Gadol said. The Kohanim and all the rest of the Yidden that were there in the Azara, when they heard the Kohen Gadol saying this, and he said also the Eibishter's name fully with the Yud Kei Vavke, the Eibishter's name, they bowed and fell on their faces. Then, so after he finishes confessing for the Averis of the Yidden, Masroi Lemishai Melicha, he gave it over to the one that was designated to take it, to the Azazel. Hakoil Ksheir and Leilichai. Anybody is fit to be used to take it. Anyone in Yid, from Klal Yisrael. Elo, Sha'aso HaKoyanim Gedolim Keva, the Koyanim Gedolim made this, they established this, that they didn't allow anyone from the Yisraelim to take the Sar Lazazel, they would give it to Koyanim to take. Rabbi Yosi said, there was a story of Vahilichai Arsala. There was an individual by the name of Arsala is the one that took the animal to the Azazel. V'Yisrael haya. This Arsala was not a Kain, he was a Yisrael. The Bach here adds, he was some individual Arsala, he was from Tzipayri. And he's the one that took it. Another interesting thing about how they took it out from the Beis HaMikdash, V'kevesh asulai. They had a ramp, sort of like this bridge, coming out where they took the animal on it, so nobody, it was like above where everyone else is standing. Why did they do this? Mipnei Bavliim, because of the Babylonians that were there, there were Yidden that were from Bavel, and there was an issue with them. Shoyim metalshim besade, they would pull the hairs from it. Why? Va'imrim lai,
hair from who?
From the animal.
From the animal. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
They would pull the ears. Va'imrim lai, and they would say him, Toil v'tzei, take it and go, take it and go. In other words, they would say, this is the one that's going to forgive our Avedas. Why are you waiting? Just get out of here. Go so we can have already our kapara. So because of this, they built this bridge. So this person taking out the Soil Azol shouldn't be attacked. Shouldn't have any issues with these Bavliim. Okay. Zog the Gemara. Now the Gemara starts with the vidui that it says that the Kohen Gadol says on the Soil Azol. It does not say in the Mishnah that part of his vidui is to confess for the Bnei Adam, for the Kainim. He only confesses for the Yidden. So it seems like the Sar Lazazel is only mechaper for all of the Avedis of the Yidden, not for the Avedis of the Kainim. Man Tana, so who's the Tana of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah said, the Loik Rabbi Yehuda. This is not following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, if it's Rabbi Yehuda, we had this before. Ha'amar Rabbi Yehuda said, Yesh lahem kapara b'sara mishtaleach. That even the Kainim get their kapara from this sara mishtaleach. The Gemara before brought that according to Rabbi Yehuda, so all the Avedis that are in the Beis HaMikdash, like the Tumah, doing the Avedis B'Tumah in the Beis HaMikdash, that you get the kapara from the par and the sara la'Hashem that's brought inside the Beis HaMikdash. Rest of the Avedis of Teira, you get the kapara from the sara mishtaleach. That's going to the Azazel, and Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that includes the Yidden and the Kainim equally. They all get their kapara from the Sarah Mishtaleach. Right, then there's another opinion there, which is what our Mishnah holds like, which is that the Kainim do not get their kapara from the Sarah Mishtaleach. The Kainim get their kapara from the Sa'ir that's brought LaHashem as a carbon. And the Gemara before said that there's two parts to that. There's the Vidui and that Sa'ir, and there's the Zrikas Adam of that Sa'ir. That's what the Kainim get their kapara from. Abaye says no, Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah could follow Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, even though in the Vidui the Kain does not spell out the Kainim separately. Doesn't matter. Atu Kainim lav b'chlal amcha Yisrael nenu. Are Kainim not included in the Jewish nation? So when he said amcha Yisrael, it includes the Kainim as well. Mishnah said, Masr l'misha milichai. He gave it over to the person that's designated to take this animal to the Azazel. Tana Rabbana, we learned in the Braisa. Ish, it says in the Torah that you give it over. Lashon the pasuk is that v'shilach biyad ish iti amidbara. So what does ish iti mean? Ish means lahachsher es hazar. You can give it even to a zar. No, it doesn't have to be a kain. What does iti mean? Sheyehei mezumen. It should be prepared. In other words, this person should be prepared from yesterday. And iti also means in its time. Va'afila b'Shabbos, which means even Yom Kippur comes out on a Shabbos, you can still take the Sarah Lazazel on a Shabbos. Iti also means that it should be done in its time, va'afila b'Tumah, even if the person that's designated to do this is Tomei. So now the Gemara explains this Braisa. Ish lahachsher es hazar. Braisa says that even a zar can do this. Frek the Gemara pshita. Why? Yeah, obviously. Why? There's not an Aveda in the Beis HaMikdash. Why would I think you need a kain for this? So the Gemara answers, Mao the Taima, because I would think to say kapara ksivibei. It says in the Torah the word kapara, as we had yesterday. It says lechaper. Yom atchai lefnei Hashem lechaper. So I would think that because it uses the term kapara, that's something that's done only by the kain. Kamash malan. Therefore it says ish. Any person can do it. Then the Braisa said, iti va'afilu b'Shabbos. Even if Yom Kippur fell out on a Shabbos, you still take the Sarah Lazazel. Lamai hilchasa. When is this relevant? In other words, the question of the Gemara, as Rashi explains, is when would there be a chilul Shabbos of taking the Sarah Lazazel? It's walking. You're not carrying it. So what kind of chilul Shabbos is there over here in doing this? Now the Mefarshim point out, wait a minute, maybe the chilul Shabbos is Rashi here actually addresses this, but there's a big discussion in Mefarshim about this. Maybe the Chilul Shabbos is you're going out to the Azazel, and therefore it was outside of the Tchum Shabbos. You're going too far. That's the Chilul Shabbos. So Rashi says the Tchum is only Midrabanan. The Isser Tchumen is only Midrabanan. Now the truth is, it depends how far it is. There's two different measures for the Tchum. We had this in the Gemara and Erevin. One is 2,000 amas. The other one is 12 mil. According to many Rishonim, the Rambam says that the Tchum of 12 mil is actually completely outside, and it's even Min HaTorah. So if the Gemara here is asking the question, what is the Chilul Shabbos? It must be that we're talking about the Azazel that was not outside the Tchum of 12 mil. It was only 2,000 amas away. That's what it seems. But there are other pshatim in this. The question of the Gemara is, what is the Chilul Shabbos of taking out the Sar Azazel? Rav Sheishes, the Chiddush here is, Loima, to tell you, She'im haya chayle, that if this animal was sick, it couldn't walk all this way, Markiv al Kseifa, you can carry it on his shoulders. That's the Chilul Shabbos. But now the Gemara explains, wait a minute, carrying an animal on your shoulders is a Chilul Shabbos min HaTorah? There's a concept called Chai Noisa Es Atzmai. A living animal is really carrying itself. And therefore, when you're carrying it, you're not carrying from the Rishus HaYachid out into the Rishus HaRabim. There's actually, some say that the problem here is that he's going from Dazara, outside of Dazara, which is from the Rishus HaYachid into Rishus HaRabim. Others say that the Azara itself had a din of Rishus HaRabim, so the issue is that he's walking 4 amas in the Rishus HaRabim, which is also Ism and Atayra. But the question over here is, isn't the animal carrying itself? Come on, so according to who is Rav Sheshes saying this? The Loike Rav Nassan. It's not like Rav Nassan's opinion. The Rav Nassan, Na'ama Chai Noisa Satzmai. Rav Nassan says that a chaya, a living animal, carries itself. Why does it say this specifically in the name of Rav Nassan? Because even though the Rabbanan also hold Chai Noisa Satzmai, but that's regarding a human being. Everybody agrees that by a human being, when you carry him in Atayri, you're not over on his. So the question is by an animal. Animal doesn't have the same consciousness as a human being, so he doesn't position himself, he doesn't help you carrying him as much as an animal, as a human being, that is. And therefore, Rav Nassan says that even by an animal, you say Chai Noisa Satzmai. So according to Rav Nassan, there'd be no issue here in Atayri. So the Gemara says, no, Filatei Rav Nassan. Even according to Rav Nassan, he would agree in this case. Choloshani. When the animal is sick, Rav Nassan agrees that the animal doesn't carry itself. And therefore, you're going to be over Min HaTorah, and that's why you have to have this pasuk iti to say that it can be done on Shabbos. Amar Rafram. So now Rafram says, based on this, what did we say? We need a special pasuk to say if Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, that you're allowed to be Machal Shabbos for this Sar Lazazel. What this teaches me is Eidov Haitzah Shabbos. There's the halacha of Eidov and the Isser of Haitzah Min HaTorah only on Shabbos, but ve'ein Eidov Haitzah L'Yom HaKippurim. The Isser of carrying out in Yom Kippur doesn't apply, because if it would, so why is the Brisa saying that we only need a pasuk to teach me if Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos? So then you're allowed to take out the Sar Lazazel. You should need it for every Yom Kippur. So therefore, I see that on Yom Kippur it's not an issue. That's what Rafram says. Taisus over here says that if you look in the Gemara in Krisis, there the Gemara says that Rafram's Raya is not true. The Gemara there actually calls it a Badusa. It's a mistake. And the reason is because for Yom Kippur, even if there is the Isser of Haitzah on Yom Kippur, reason why you don't need a pasuk for that is because that's the mitzvah on Yom Kippur. There is a Isser of Haitzah on Yom Kippur. But here the mitzvah is to take out the Sar La'azazel. So therefore you don't need any special pasuk for that. You need a special pasuk to say that even if it falls out on a Shabbos, so it's not a regular Yom Kippur, still you're allowed to carry it out. So therefore the Gemara in Krisis doesn't accept this pshat. The Mefarshim actually say that over here the Gemara does accept the Raya of Rafram, because what did it say before? Before it said that on a regular, in order to be able to do this Aveda that's required, to take out the Sar La'azazel on Yom Kippur, you don't need to be Machal Yom Kippur, because usually the animal is walking. The only time that it's necessary is if the animal is sick and therefore it can't walk, so then you have to carry it. So you can't say that even on a regular Yom Kippur, I'm allowed to do this because it's necessary. This is the Avodah of Yom Kippur. No, it's not necessary. Maybe you should use a different animal. Over here you're using the animal that's sick. Therefore the Gemara is asking, why don't you need a pasuk for Yom Kippur to say that you can use the animal that's sick? So therefore the Rafram brought this raya. The Gemara continues, when it said iti va'afila b'tumah, that iti also means it's done in time, even if you're tummy. Lamai hilchasa. In what case? Lagabi, what case are we saying this? In other words, what's the issue of tumah here? Rav Sheishes loimat's coming to say she'im nitma mishalchay. If the person that's designated to send to take this Sar La'azazel out to the Azazel, and he's Tameh, Nichnas Tameh La'azare, he's allowed to come into the Azare even when he's Tameh, U'mishalcha, and the Kohen Gadol sends him off with this Sar La'azazel. Now the Gemara brings a very interesting piece here in the Gemara, questions that were asked from Rabbi Eliezer. And these questions are in connection to the Sar La'azazel, but then there's other questions, and the common denominator of all these questions are that Rabbi Eliezer did not give straight answers. And the Gemara will explain soon why he didn't give straight answers. Shalus Rabbi Eliezer, they asked Rabbi Eliezer this question that we had before, Chala, the animal that was supposed to be taken out to the Azazel is sick, Ma'ashay Kiveyo Al Ksefai. What's the halacha? Could you take it on your shoulders and take it out that way? Are you allowed to do it on Yom Kippur? Amalam, so he gave them the following answer. Yachol hula harkiv anivatem. This animal is strong enough that me and you should ride on it. In other words, he avoided the answer. They asked him another question. Chala mishalchai. If the person that was designated to send it, to take it, got sick, ma'ashe shalchenu biyadacher. Do you designate someone else? Amalahem, so he answered them, hey b'shalom, let's be in peace. In other words, what he was saying was, why are you asking this question? Everything is peaceful, we're feeling good, so this question is irrelevant. Hey b'shalom anivatem, you read it together. Hey b'shalom, me and you are all in peace. The next question they asked him, Dachvai v'loi meis. You pushed it aoff the cliff of the Azazel and the animal survived, it didn't die. Ma'o sheyered achra v'yimisenu. Are you supposed to then go down and kill the animal? Is that part of what is done? Or that's the purpose or not? I mean, after all, it is Yom Kippur. So the question that, as the Mefarshim explain, is maybe he's asking, maybe you're not allowed to kill it. It's Yom Kippur. If it dies, that's what you're supposed to do in Yom Kippur. But if it didn't die, you have to leave it. So again, he gave them a very cryptic answer. So all enemies of Hashem should be lost, should be destroyed. But it didn't really answer the question. Then the Gemara brings, the Chachamim said clearly the halacha about all these cases. Chala, if the animal is sick, makiva al kseifa. Then you take it on your shoulders. Chala mishalchai, the person that's supposed to take it got sick, yishlachenu biyadacha, send it with someone else. Dochvay v'loi meis, if you pushed it off the cliff and it didn't die, yered achra v'yimisana. So you have to follow it and then you have to kill it. Okay, now the Gemara brings other questions that were asked from Rabbi Eliezer, and also he didn't give a clear answer.
I have to kill it.
Huh? Yeah, however, no, not lavdafka shchita. You have to kill it. Yeah, to kill it. Shalos Rabbi Eliezer. They asked by Rabbi Eliezer the question: Ploini, this individual, ma'al le'olam haba. Is he going to be zeichet le'olam haba? So Rashi has two pshat, and one pshat Rashi says they asked him about a specific person. Is he going to be zeichet le'olam haba or not? Another pshat Rashi brings is they asked about Shlomo Melech, Shlomo ben David. It says in the Psukim and Nach that there were certain averis he did, that he was not like his father. So therefore they were asking, is he going to be zeichet le'olam haba? So he didn't want to answer. Amalei, so he answered them, Lo shaltuni el al ploini. So you're only asking me about ploini. Why aren't you asking me about someone else? So according to the second shot in Rashi, what he meant to say is, why aren't you asking me about Avshalom, the son of David the Melech, whether he's going to be zeichet le'olam haba? So he didn't want to give an answer about Shlomo Melech. So he said, why don't you ask me about Avshalom? Another question that they asked him, Mao lahatzel roye kifsa minari. Should a shepherd save the sheep from a lion that's attacking it? So, according to the simple pshat, the question that he's asking is, this is the food of the lion, so maybe I should just let the lion eat the lamb. Should I save it or not? That's the simple pshat. Rabbeinu Chananel here says that the Ari, the lion here, is David HaMelech, and the lamb is Bathsheba. And what he's asking is, Bathsheba, when he married Bathsheba, was he allowed to marry her? Was she an Eishes Ish or not? That's the question. So again he didn't answer that. Instead he said, Lo shaltuni ela ala kifsa. You're asking me about the lamb. Ma la'atzel haroyim enari. What's the halacha? Should you be saving the shepherd himself from the lion? So again, according to Rabbeinu Chananel, this refers to the husband of Bathsheba, to Uriah. Right, so by Uriah, the question is, so if you look over there in the story in Nach, the Gemara says it's in Shabbos, that he was really a Meired B'malchus, because he referred to Yoav in the presence of David HaMelech with titles of honor. So therefore, is he considered to be a Meired B'malchus, and therefore he was supposed to be killed, which David HaMelech had him killed in the war, or not? So again, the Ari, the line is David HaMelech, and the Roya is Uriah. So he answered, Lo shaltuni ela l'roya. You're asking me about the shepherd. I have a different question you should be asking. Mamzer mahu lirish. A mamzer. So does he get Yerusha together with the other children? Or ma'u liyavim. What's the halacha of yibum? If you have a mamzer, does the mamzer do yibum for a woman that her husband passed away without children, and there's the halach of yibum, that the brother has to marry her. Does a mamza do yibum? Or then they asked him a question, Mahu loso des beisai. Should a person plaster his house with nice white plaster, even now in the time of Golus, when we are mourning the churban of the Beis HaMikdash? This is a Gemara. The Gemara says this in Gittin, I believe, right? There are different places where the Gemara talks about a person shouldn't plaster his house fully because of the churban Beis HaMikdash. So they asked him about this. So he didn't answer them. Instead he said, Ma'al losa des kivra. You should be asking me, should you put plaster by a caver? This was the way then that they used to have the sign to see where a caver is. They would put white plaster, similar to what we have like a matzeva, to see where the caver is. So in all these cases, he did not answer them the question. Okay? So the Gemara now explains, why not? He didn't answer them, not because he was trying to take them off course. He was trying to take them into a subject that they weren't asking stam to drei them a cup. But rather, the reason was, he never gave any response, he never answered anything if it's something that he did not hear directly from his teacher. There was a wise woman that asked Rabbi Eliezer a question. Since those the people that serve the Egel. So all the different kinds of ways that they serve the Egel, so it's all the same thing. It's serving Avodah Zarah. So why, if you look in Chumash, do you see that the people that serve the Egel, the different people that died because of this, they didn't all die the same way. As Rashi here brings, there are some that were killed by a sword, the Moshe Rabbeinu killed them. There was some that died with a magefa, in a plague that happened then. And there was a third category that died, Moshe Rabbeinu gave them basically to drink waters like a saita, and their stomach popped, like a saita. So there were 3 different ways that they died. So she wanted to understand, why was this? So, Allah, he didn't answer. Ein chachama leisha ela bepelach. The wisdom of a woman is only with pelach, which is with a spindle, right? In other words, she's telling her, use your wisdom to sew and to knit or whatever it is. Don't ask me questions about these things in Torah. The pasuk says, by the Mishkan. So the wise women, they came to weave the what they needed for the Yeriyos. So now, but the Gemara here actually brings the answer to this question and 2 opinions. Itmer, so we learned an argument about this. Rav Levi. Chadamar, one said, the 3 different ways the people that served the Egel died. The difference is, Zivach v'kiter, the ones that actually brought karbanis or keteres for the Egel B'sayev. They were the ones that were killed with a sword. Gofaf and Nishek, the ones that didn't serve to that extent, but they just hugged or kissed it, b'misa. So they died with the plague. Samach b'levavai, those that were enjoying and happy with the Egel, b'hadreikin. They're the ones that died with hadreikin, which is the waters that Moshe Rabbeinu gave them, and their stomach popped like a saita. That's one opinion. Another opinion is, and this is the opinion that Rashi brings in Chumash, Eidim v'asra, if it was a case where there was witnesses and they were warned and they still served the Egel b'sayev, so then they were killed b'sayev with a sword. Rashi actually says that sayev is the misa that's given to Bnei Noach. Okay, they were judged like Bnei Noach with a sayev. So that's for the ones that actually got a warning. Eidim b'lo yasra, the ones that served the Egel and the witnesses that said this about them, but they didn't get a warning, b'misa. They died with the misa, which is the plague. Lo eidim v'lo yasra, the ones that served the Egel, but there was no witnesses or no warning, badreiken. They were the ones that drank the waters of Moshe Rabbeinu. Rav Yehuda, on the subject of Chet Egel, so Rav Yehuda said, Shifte Shalevi lo yavad avedis kechaven. The Shevet Levi, they did not serve the Egel. Shenema, because later when it came to punishing the Yidden, it says, Vayamed Moshe b'shara machne, v'goyim Moshe Rabbeinu stood there, and the pasuk said, Mila Shem Elai, he said, Vayasvei elu kol bnei Levi, the entire Shevet of Levi came to Moshe Rabbeinu. They did not serve the Egel. Yosef Ravina v'kama l'hashmaita. Ravina said over this that Rabbi Yehuda just said that Shevet Levi didn't serve the Egel. Eisvei b'nei Rav Papa bar Abba l'Ravina. The children of Rav Papa bar Abba asked a question to Ravina about this. But doesn't the pasuk say about Shevet Levi that one of the schusim is that they said about their father and mother, I don't know my father and mother. When was that? When it came to punishing the people that served the Egel, they didn't hold themselves back of even punishing their own father and mother that served the Egel. So I see that even from Levim themselves served the Egel. So the Gemara answers, no, that's not what it means. Aviv means Avi imay mi Yisrael. Doesn't mean the father, it means a grandfather. And a who? Your mother's father, which is of Yisrael, not a Levi. When it says Echav in that pasuk, it means Achiv mi imay, only a half-brother from your mother. Mi Yisrael, also and the father was Yisrael. And Banav, when it says your children, it doesn't mean your children, it means your grandchildren. Bnei bita mi Yisrael. It means your grandchildren from your daughter, which was married to Yisrael. But the Leviim themselves never served the Egel. The next thing it said of the Mishnah was the Kevesh Osula. They had a ram, so that it said of the Mishnah, the Bavliim should not come and tear out the ears and make problems. Amar Rabba Baba Chane, loy Bavliim hoyu. It wasn't Bavliim that did this. El Alexandriim hoyu. These were Yidden from Alexandria that did this. Umitoich shesainim es Bavliim, because the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael hated the Bavliim because they didn't join them in Eretz Yisrael. Hoyu koyer noisan al shmon. So they referred to anybody that they didn't like. They used to refer to them as the Babylonians. So there is over here in the Mishnah, it says the term Bavliim, but it really means the Yidden from Alexandria. Tanya Rab Yudah also said, Lo Alexandria, Lo Bavliim hoyu el Alexandrium. It wasn't the Bavliim that made the problems. It was Alexandrium hoyu. Let Rab Yosi, and Rab Yosi said about this, Tanuach dait choshe nachtes daiti. You should feel good that you made me feel good, because he was from Bavel, his family is from Bavel, and you're calling the Babylonians the troublemakers. You're calling my family the troublemakers. So he was happy that it was Yidden from Alexandria. And then what did it say? Toil would say, they would say, take it and go out. Tane. So we learned in the Braisa, what would they scream? Ma shohit sfiredain. Why is this goat waiting here? V'chayve dare sagian. And the Avedis of the generation are many. So therefore take it out quickly to the Azazel that our Avedis should be forgiven. That's what they would say.